Developed by a newly formed studio, Don't Nod Entertainment, Remember Me is a refreshing new IP that flourishes through creativity. The core theme deals with memories and how these memories shape who we are and what we become. Certain memories can haunt us for the rest of our lives, but what if they didn't have to? Remember Me toys with the idea of being able to enter another person's mind in order to steal or fabricate their existing memories. You play as Nilin, a likable and believable female protagonist. Wiped of her memory, Nilin must piece together who she was and is on her mission to destroy Memorize, an organization responsible for the dystopian-type world. Aided and rescued by a mysterious voice by the name of Edge, who guides her on this mission. Early on, Nilin discovers she is a memory hunter. Wielding a high-tech glove, she has the ability to steal, along with remix, people's memories to her every whim, which plays a pivotal role in the gameplay and is implemented very well. The actual plot itself is a pretty solid one that remains interesting throughout, although most of the secondary characters aren't utilized properly and instead seem to only exist to forward the story and produce some poorly written yet stupidly funny dialogue. There are some decent yet predictable twists that revitalize the game going into its finale. Overall, I enjoyed the story quite a bit, but it doesn't live up to the astounding world in which it takes place. Based in a future cyberpunk-themed world, environments in Remember Me feel immersive. Character models are lacking a bit, seeming a little rough around the edges, but in no way feel out of place. I think it may just be that they look a little cartoony. The breathtaking environment visuals make up for any of these rough spots. The world of Remember Me really comes to life, which causes the player to quickly become sucked in. Remember Me is set up to be very story-driven, and because of this, is linear-based. I've heard quite a few complaints, particularly from critics, complaining about how this game isn't open world. Why people nowadays want every game to be absolutely open is beyond me. Personally, I don't think this game would have been nearly as good if they would have attempted an open world structure. Of course, then again, I do prefer linear to open anyways, although if it would have been open, I'd review it based on the type of game it is, not the type of game I want it to be, which doesn't seem to be the case with a lot of critics. All that being said, Remember Me is split up into separate chapters that don't offer a lot in terms of exploration. Aside from some hidden collectibles, there is really only one route to take. It should be mentioned that the campaign is the only mode featured in the game. For some this may be a deal breaker, but in the game's defense, the campaign is a lengthy one, taking me at least 10 hours to complete. Not to mention, in my opinion, the replay value is quite high, not because any incentive is given to players who start back up, aside from higher difficulties, simply because the game is just downright intriguing and fun to play. Everything about Remember Me strives in being original. The gameplay is no exception, boasting an intuitive, addicting combat system, which I absolutely love, although it's not without its flaws. Being a new IP, this is not overly surprising. This gives the developers plenty of room to expand on the combat should this game get a sequel. At first glance, the combat appears to be overly complex. In reality though, it's actually fairly simple. Throughout the course of the game, the player is granted different combo strings. These combo strings are predetermined, the simplest string being XXX. What makes these strings unique is that the player is able to customize each button press in the string with a different effect. So the player could make the first button press in the combo regain health, the second increase power, and the third decrease the cooldown time for different special attacks. Also, it's worth noting that the further the button press is in the string, the greater the effect will be. Special attacks are quite effective and are tailored to be effective against certain enemies and ineffective against others. Knowing under what circumstances to use these special attacks can turn the tides of battle in the player's favor. Alright, so activating these combo strings is fairly simple, seeing as the timing between each button press is universal between each separate string. On top of being able to attack, the player's only means of defense is dodging. I mentioned the combat has some flaws. I'm not sure flaws is actually the best word to use because it all works well, but there's plenty of things that need improved. As it stands now, the combat system is an excellent base from which the developers could expand upon if given opportunity. First off, throughout the entirety of the game, the player is only given a few different combo strings to customize. I think they should have added more to add some diversity. That way the player isn't always inputting the same buttons constantly. Better yet, they should make it so that the player can make up their own button combinations, and as the game progresses, allow the player to be able to purchase extra inputs for the combo. So say at the beginning the player can execute a 3-hit combo, but by the end of the game make it so they can perform a 15-hit combo or something of the sort. Secondly, the dodge mechanic works fairly well, but unless you dodge over the enemy you are currently attacking, your combo is interrupted, causing you to have to start it all over again. Same thing happens if you start a combo on one enemy, but try and transition into attacking a new enemy halfway through that combo. Instead of continuing the combo as it should, it will break it instead. In my opinion, this interrupts the combat flow, which is kind of the basis of the whole system. One thing the game is lacking and is in serious need of is some sort of a block or parry button that can be activated during your combo and won't disrupt it. Dodging looks smooth and allows the combat to flow together seamlessly, but something else is needed in terms of defense. I mainly say this because there are times where you'll be fighting a lot of enemies at once, causing you to become overwhelmed. This is when the dodging attacking method just isn't enough. Something more is needed so that the player doesn't realize the combat is almost too limited for certain situations, which can cause frustrations. Along with all that, I would occasionally encounter some minor camera and auto-targeting issues. On top of combat, there is more to the gameplay. Platforming takes up a good portion of it. Platforming functions similarly to how it would in Tomb Raider games. Nilin can scale walls, jump gaps, and whilst doing so, a small orange icon will hover over the area you are supposed to be going. Which is quite nice. This helps avoid the typical running around and not knowing where to go. There are also a few minor puzzles and riddles towards the end of the game that add a bit of diversity. I mentioned earlier how Nilin could enter a person's mind and either steal or remix their memories. Remixing memories is definitely the most unique addition to the gameplay. During one of these few and far between sequences, the player would watch the victim's memory all the way through. Afterwards, they are then able to rewind, play, pause, fast forward, back through the person's mind, all the while changing little things throughout the memory to produce different outcomes, until the outcome desired is reached. The changes made aren't drastic, but when combined with others, this is able to produce the lethal ending desired. Remember Me succeeds in becoming the unique sci-fi epic it set out to become. Through a decent story and an immersive world, most people will be sold on it. Secondary characters are a bit underused and at times have some iffy dialogue. Platforming is simple, fun, and works well. The combat system is an excellent, unique base from which the developers have plenty of room to grow from. Remixing memories is something I've never seen done in a game and is executed satisfactory. This is one IP that desperately deserves a sequel. Remember Me gets a 9.5 out of 10.